Stephanie's hands trembled as she stood outside room 304 of Houston Methodist Hospital. Through the small window in the door, she could see him. Captain James Monroe, her husband. She smoothed down the white lace of her wedding dress. Simple, elegant, borrowed from a woman she'd met only 2 weeks ago. The bouquet of white roses felt heavy in her shaking hands. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. She pushed open the door. The room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors and the soft hiss of medical equipment. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, making everything look almost peaceful. James lay in the hospital bed, still as stone. They'd propped him up slightly for the ceremony, dressed him in his army uniform with all his medals. But now he was back in a hospital gown, connected to IVs and monitors. His eyes closed. He looked like he was sleeping. Like any moment he might wake up and smile at her. But he wouldn't. The doctor said he was in a deep coma, that he might never wake up. Stephanie walked slowly to his bedside, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. "Hey," she said softly. "It's me, your wife." The word felt strange in her mouth. She sat in the chair next to his bed, still holding her bouquet. "I know you can't hear me. The doctors say you're not responsive. But your mom, she thinks you're still in there somewhere, fighting." Stephanie reached out and gently took his hand. It was warm. "So I'm going to talk to you anyway, because maybe she's right. Maybe you are fighting." The monitors beeped steadily. "I'm Stephanie," she continued. "Stephanie Thompson. Well, Stephanie Monroe now, I guess. We got married about an hour ago. You were there, but you probably don't remember." She laughed, but it came out broken. "This isn't how I imagined my wedding day. I never really imagined getting married at all. Foster kids don't usually dream about white dresses and happily ever after. We're too busy surviving." She stared at his face. Strong, handsome, peaceful. "Your mom showed me pictures of you. Before the accident. You were... God, you were really something. Always smiling, always helping people. They said you saved 3 kids from a burning house. That you got hurt protecting a witness." Her voice cracked. "You're a real hero. A genuine good person." Stephanie wiped her eyes. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a girl who got humiliated 99 times by her own family and was stupid enough to keep hoping they'd love me." She squeezed his hand. "But you know what? Being married to you, even like this, is better than being with any of them. At least you fought for something real." The door burst open. Stephanie jumped to her feet as 2 men in suits stormed in. "Miss Thompson," one of them said, "you need to come with us, now." "How did you get in here?" Stephanie backed toward James's bed. "This is a private room. Derek Williams sent us. He needs to speak with you. It's urgent." Stephanie's blood ran cold. "Derek? What does he want?" "That's between you and him. Let's go." The man reached for her arm. "Don't you dare touch me." Stephanie's voice rose, that fire finally exploding. "I just got married. You can't just... Security!" A nurse's voice rang out from the hallway. "Security to room 304. The 2 men hesitated, exchanged glances, then backed toward the door. "Tell Derek Williams," Stephanie said, her voice shaking with rage, "that I have nothing to say to him. Not now, not ever. And if he sends anyone after me again, I'll press charges for harassment." The men left just as hospital security arrived. Stephanie collapsed back into the chair, adrenaline making her shake. She looked at James, still peacefully unconscious. "So that's my ex-boyfriend," she said with a bitter laugh. "Real piece of work, right? I bet you're glad you're resting so you don't have to deal with this mess." She let out a small laugh. Great, this was her life now, talking to a man who couldn't hear her. She wanted to scream, shout, run away, but she was stuck. Was this the end of her life as she knew it? How did a woman end up in a wedding dress, married to a stranger in a coma, being hunted by her ex-boyfriend on what should be the happiest day of her life? Let me tell you a story about betrayal, survival, and what happens when you push someone too far. If you've ever been underestimated, ever been told you weren't good enough, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now because Stephanie's journey is just getting started. Now let me tell you how this nightmare began. 3 months earlier, Stephanie had imagined this moment 1,000 times. Walking up the stone pathway to the Thompson estate in River Oaks, Houston's wealthiest neighborhood. The mansion was massive. White columns, manicured lawns, a 3-car garage showcasing vehicles worth more than most people's houses. This was her real family. Her biological family. Stephanie had grown up in foster care in Detroit. She'd bounced from house to house, never really belonging anywhere. Some homes were okay, some were nightmares. All of them were temporary. Then 3 months ago, everything changed. A social worker called with news that seemed impossible. DNA test results showed Stephanie wasn't an orphan. She was the daughter of Robert and Diana Thompson, wealthy real estate developers in Houston who'd lost her 24 years ago in a hospital mix-up. She'd been declared gone as an infant, but she'd actually been alive, lost in the system this whole time. Now, finally, she was coming home. The front door opened before she could knock. A young woman about her age stood there, beautiful, with flawless dark skin, a designer pantsuit, and a smile that was all teeth, no warmth. "You must be Stephanie," the woman said. "I'm Gwen, your sister." The way she said sister sounded like an insult. "Nice to meet you," Stephanie said, extending her hand. Gwen looked at Stephanie's hand like it was diseased, then turned away. "Come in, they're waiting." Stephanie followed her inside, fighting to keep her expression neutral. Already starting with disrespect? Fine. She could handle this. The inside of the mansion was even more impressive. Marble floors so polished you could see your reflection. A crystal chandelier that probably cost more than Stephanie's entire education. Original artwork on the walls. In the living room sat Robert and Diana Thompson, her biological parents. Her brother Daniel stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, barely acknowledging her presence. They all looked at her the same way, like she was a problem they had to solve. "Stephanie?" Robert said stiffly. No hug, no tears, just her name, spoken like a business obligation. "Hello," Stephanie said, keeping her voice steady. "Thank you for inviting me." Diana dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, but Stephanie noticed there were no actual tears. "It's just so overwhelming, having you back after all these years. We thought we'd lost you forever." "But you didn't," Stephanie said. "I was alive, in the system, waiting." Uncomfortable silence filled the room. "Well," Daniel said, checking his Rolex, "you're here now. That's what matters, right?" Gwen laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Sure. That's what matters." Stephanie felt anger rising in her chest. That protective fire that had gotten her through 24 years of instability, of being told she wasn't wanted, of surviving when everything said she shouldn't. But she pushed it down. These were her parents, her real family. They just needed time to adjust. She had no idea how wrong she was. The first week was brutal. They gave Stephanie a room, the smallest bedroom in the 8-bedroom mansion, right next to the laundry room. The walls were thin. She could hear the washing machines running at all hours. Meanwhile, Gwen's room was practically a penthouse suite with a balcony, walk-in closet, and a private bathroom with a jacuzzi tub. "I've been here for 20 years, Gwen said when she caught Stephanie looking. "I'm the daughter they actually raised." "You're just biology." Stephanie's jaw tightened. "Biology matters. Does it?" Gwen tilted her head. "Because from where I'm standing, DNA doesn't mean much when you don't know which fork to use at dinner, when you don't know which designer brands matter, when you talk like you're from the streets instead of from society." "I am from the streets," Stephanie said, her voice hard. "That's what foster care is. I survived things you can't even imagine." "What have you survived, Gwen? A bad manicure appointment?" Gwen's smile disappeared. "Careful, Stephanie. You're a guest in this house. Guests can be asked to leave." "I'm not a guest. I'm family." "We'll see about that." That night, Stephanie lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling, listening to washing machines rumble through the wall. She wanted to scream, to fight, to tell them all exactly what she thought of their fake family and their conditional love. But she had nowhere else to go. No money. No backup plan. So she stayed quiet. For now. The real nightmare started 2 weeks later at a family dinner. Gwen set down her fork and looked directly at Stephanie with calculating eyes. "I have a proposition for you, Stephanie." Stephanie looked up from her plate. "What kind of proposition?" Gwen pulled out a folded piece of paper from her Chanel purse and slid it across the dining table. "A bet." "A bet?" Stephanie picked up the paper. It was a contract, professionally written, legally binding. I bet that I can take everything from you, Gwen said calmly, like she was discussing the weather. Your room, your possessions, even the people you care about. If I succeed 9 times in a row, you leave this house forever and never come back. Stephanie stared at her. Are you serious right now? Completely serious. Gwen sipped her wine. But if you win even once, if you manage to keep something I want, then I'll leave instead. I'll walk away from this family, sign away any inheritance rights, and you'll have them all to yourself. Stephanie looked at Robert and Diana. You're hearing this, right? Your daughter wants to make a BT about whether I can stay in this family? Robert cleared his throat. Stephanie, perhaps it would be good to settle things, establish boundaries. Boundaries? Stephanie's voice rose. This isn't about boundaries. She wants to play games with my life. If you're so confident you belong here, Gwen said smoothly, then you should have no problem winning. Unless, she paused dramatically, unless you know, deep down, that you don't belong here, that you're just a foster kid pretending to be one of us. Every instinct in Stephanie's body screamed at her to walk away. This was manipulation. This was a trap. But the thought of Gwen leaving, of finally having a real family without this poison in it. Fine, Stephanie said, grabbing a pen. I'll sign your stupid contract. Gwen's smile was triumphant. Excellent. Let the games begin. Stephanie signed her name, sealing her fate for the next 3 months of torment. The first 3 rounds happened fast. Round 1. Gwen decided she wanted Stephanie's room for her meditation space. She claimed the sound of the laundry machines helped her focus. Robert sided with Gwen immediately. It's important for Gwen's mental health, Stephanie. You understand? Stephanie moved to an even smaller room in the basement. No windows, just concrete walls and the smell of mildew. She wanted to scream, to fight. But the contract said she had to comply with each challenge, or she'd forfeit everything. So, she moved. Round 2. Stephanie had found a stray dog outside the mansion, a sweet pit bull mix she named Lucky. The dog had followed her home one evening, and for the first time since arriving in Houston, Stephanie felt like she had something that was truly hers, something that loved her unconditionally. Gwen suddenly developed a severe allergy to dogs. Diana made Stephanie take Lucky to a shelter. We can't have animals affecting Gwen's health, sweetheart. Surely you understand. Stephanie held Lucky at the animal shelter, tears streaming down her face as she said goodbye to the one living creature that had shown her unconditional love. I'm so sorry, she whispered into Lucky's fur. I'm so sorry, baby. Round 3. Stephanie had gotten accepted to Rice University with a full academic scholarship. She'd worked her butt off, maintained a 4.0 GPA at community college while working 2 jobs, and she'd earned that scholarship through blood, sweat, and tears. But Gwen suddenly decided she wanted to go to Rice too. Robert made some calls, pulled some strings, made some very generous donations. 2 weeks later, Gwen had Stephanie's scholarship. Stephanie ended up at Houston Community College instead, her dreams of a prestigious education shattered. You're better suited for community college anyway, Diana said, not even looking up from her phone. It's more your level. Stephanie's hands shook with rage, but she didn't explode. Not yet. By round 8, Stephanie had lost everything that mattered. Her room, her dog, her education, her dignity. The family didn't even pretend to care about her anymore. They stopped inviting her to family dinners, stopped asking about her day, stopped acknowledging she existed unless Gwen needed her for another round of humiliation. But round 9? That was the cruelest one yet. Stephanie met Derek Williams at the Houston Community College Library on a rainy Tuesday in September. He was tall, dark-skinned, with warm brown eyes, an easy smile, and a gentleness that made Stephanie's guarded heart crack open just a little. He said he was a scholarship student too, working 2 jobs to pay for school while helping support his family back in Louisiana. They bonded over late-night study sessions, shared dreams of making something of themselves despite their circumstances, and the exhausting reality of being underestimated everywhere they went. Derek seemed to understand her in ways no one else did. He listened when she talked. He remembered small details about her life. He made her feel seen. For the first time since coming to Houston, Stephanie felt valued, wanted, like she mattered to someone. After 3 months of friendship and slowly growing feelings, Derek asked her to be his girlfriend at a small coffee shop near campus. Stephanie said yes, her heart full for the first time in what felt like forever. She thought she'd finally won something. Gwen couldn't touch. She thought she'd found someone who chose her. She was so wrong. If you're already feeling angry for Stephanie, drop a comment saying, "Fight back." Let me know you're ready to see her win. And subscribe, because what happens next is going to break your heart before it gets better. One evening in late November, Gwen called an emergency family meeting. Stephanie walked into the living room and stopped dead. Derek sat on the expensive leather couch next to Gwen, looking uncomfortable but not leaving. His arm rested on the back of the sofa near Gwen's shoulders. "What's going on?" Stephanie asked slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. Gwen smiled that predatory smile. "Stephanie, I'd like to formally introduce you to my boyfriend, Derek." The world tilted. "What?" Stephanie whispered. Derek finally met her eyes. He looked guilty, but not guilty enough. "Stephanie, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner, but Gwen and I have been together for a while now." "How long?" Stephanie's voice came out strangled. "Since before I met you," Derek admitted quietly. The room spun. Stephanie grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "You..." She couldn't even form words. "You were with her? This whole time?" "Derek and I had a little disagreement," Gwen said, examining her nails casually. "I suggested he explore his options, see what else was out there. Turns out nothing else compared to what we have. Right, baby?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Gwen, you said you'd..." "Said I'd what?" Gwen's voice turned sharp. "Be gentle? Why?" She needs to hear the truth. Stephanie looked at Derek, the man she'd trusted, maybe even loved. "Tell me she's lying." Derek looked away. "I'm sorry, Stephanie. My family, we're struggling financially. Gwen offered to help if I helped her with the bet." The final piece clicked into place. "Oh my God," Stephanie breathed. "This was all part of it. The coffee shop meetings, the study sessions. You telling me you understood me? It was all fake? All of it?" "Not all of it," Derek said weakly. "I did enjoy spending time with you." "Get out," Stephanie screamed, her fire finally erupting. "Get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret." "Stephanie, please," Diana started. "And you," Stephanie whirled on her mother. "You sat here and watched this happen. You knew, you all knew." Daniel looked up from his phone, smirking. "That's 8 losses, Stephanie. Just one more and you're out of our lives for good." Gwen stood up gracefully, smoothing her designer dress. "Stephanie, don't you want to know what the 9th bet is?" "I don't give a damn what it is." "Oh, I think you will." Gwen walked closer, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "The 9th bet is simple. Derek chooses. Right here, right now. If he chooses you, I leave this family forever, just like the contract says. But if he chooses me..." Her smile widened. "You marry Captain James Monroe." Stephanie's blood turned to ice. "Who is Captain James Monroe?" Robert cleared his throat. "He's a decorated war hero, Army Ranger. He was critically injured 6 months ago while protecting a witness in a criminal trial. He's been in a coma ever since at Houston Methodist Hospital. Why would I..." "His family is looking for someone to marry him," Diana explained, her voice detached, clinical. "For comfort. They believe having a wife might help him fight to wake up. But if he doesn't..." She trailed off meaningfully. "Then I'd be a 24-year-old left alone." Stephanie finished, her voice hollow. "You want me to marry a man who might not make it." "The Monroe family is very influential in Houston," Robert said. "Very wealthy. They've been putting pressure on prominent families with eligible daughters for months. When we mentioned we had you..." "You offered me?" Stephanie's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You offered me up like a sacrifice?" "We offered Gwen first," Diana said quickly. "But we couldn't bear the thought of her wasting her youth on a man who might never wake up. So we suggested you as an alternative." The betrayal hit Stephanie like a physical blow. They didn't just not love her. They saw her as disposable, as something to be used and thrown away. "Stephanie," Gwen said sweetly, "all you have to do is win this last round. Get Derek to choose you over me, and you'll never have to see me again. Isn't that what you want?" Stephanie looked at Derek. He stood up slowly, and for one brief, stupid moment, Stephanie thought she saw genuine regret in his eyes. Then he walked over to Gwen and took her hand. "I choose Gwen," Derek said. "I'm sorry, Stephanie, but my family needs the financial help Gwen's offering. It's nothing personal." The room erupted. Daniel laughed, cruel and mocking. Gwen's smile was triumphant. Even Diana looked relieved. "That's 9, Gwen announced victoriously. "You lost, Stephanie. Time to marry that man in a coma and get out of our lives forever." But Stephanie didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, something fundamental shifting inside her. The scared foster kid who'd been desperate for love ceased to exist in that moment, and someone new was born. Someone who'd had enough. "Fine," Stephanie said quietly. Everyone stopped celebrating. "What?" Gwen looked confused. "I said fine. I'll marry Captain Monroe." Stephanie turned to Robert, her voice calm but deadly. "But I want something in exchange." Robert raised an eyebrow. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate." "Aren't I?" Stephanie smiled, cold and sharp. "The Monroe family is desperate, right? You said they've been pressuring prominent families for months. Nobody wants to marry a man in a coma. Nobody wants to risk being left alone so young. But I'll do it, if you give me Grandma Thompson's properties." Robert's face turned purple. "Those properties are worth millions. 2 historic buildings in downtown Houston? 8 million, to be exact," Stephanie said. "I did my research, and they're just sitting there empty while you and Diana fight over who gets to inherit them when Grandma passes. So here's my offer. Sign them over to me now, and I'll marry Captain Monroe. I'll be the dutiful daughter-in-law the Monroe family needs. I'll play my part perfectly." "This is insane," Gwen jumped up. "Dad, you promised me those properties." "I promised to consider it," Robert said slowly. Looking at Stephanie with new eyes, seeing her clearly for the first time. "You can't be seriously thinking about this." Gwen's voice rose to a shriek. But Robert was thinking about it. Stephanie could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. The Monroe family was powerful. General Thomas Monroe had connections to the governor, to Houston's elite, to people who could make or break Robert's business ventures. Refusing them had consequences. But so did giving Stephanie $8 million in property. "The Monroe family needs this marriage to happen quickly," Stephanie pressed. "Captain Monroe's grandfather is heartbroken. He's 87 years old, a decorated general who can't handle the thought of his grandson not making it while alone. You told me yourselves, they're pushing hard for this wedding." She crossed her arms. "So either I get those properties, or I walk away right now, and you can explain to General Monroe why you couldn't deliver a bride." The room went silent. This wasn't the scared foster girl they'd been manipulating for 3 months. This was someone who'd learned to play their game, and play it better. Robert and Diana exchanged a long look. Some silent conversation happened between them. Finally, Robert nodded slowly. "Fine. But those properties are currently set to transfer to Gwen upon your grandmother's passing. We'll need to change the paperwork." "I want it done before the wedding," Stephanie said. "Legally binding, notarized, no loopholes, no takebacks." "Agreed. And one more condition." Diana sighed heavily. "What now?" "The marriage stays secret until after it's done. Gwen and Derek don't get to know when or where the ceremony happens. This is between me, you, and the Monroe family." Gwen frowned. "Why would you—" "Not your concern." Stephanie cut her off with ice in her voice. "Do we have a deal or not?" Robert extended his hand across the table. "Deal." Stephanie shook it, her grip firm and steady. As she walked out of the room, she heard Derek call after her. "Stephanie, wait." She didn't even slow down. She was done being their victim. If they wanted to force her into a marriage with a man in a coma, fine. She'd do it. But she'd do it on her terms, with her conditions, and she'd make damn sure she came out on top. What Stephanie didn't know was that this marriage would change everything, in ways none of them could possibly imagine. That night, Stephanie lay in her basement room, staring at the water-stained ceiling, her mind racing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She opened the text. Ms. Thompson, this is Eleanor Monroe, Captain James Monroe's mother. Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement. I know the circumstances are unusual. My son was a remarkable man, a true hero. He saved 3 children from a house fire before he was critically injured protecting a witness in a criminal trial. The doctors say his chances aren't good, but our family believes in miracles. Your marriage might give him something to fight for. We'll handle all wedding expenses and arrangements. The ceremony is scheduled for 2 weeks from today. Stephanie stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Can I ask you something? Of course, dear. What was he like, before the accident? There was a pause. Then the response came. Strong, determined. He never gave up on anything or anyone. James fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. It's why he became a ranger, then a police officer. He had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. I think, in another life, you two would have liked each other very much. Stephanie put her phone down and closed her eyes. In 2 weeks, she'd marry a complete stranger in a hospital bed. A man who might never wake up. A man whose time might be running out. But she'd also have $8 million in property. She'd have her freedom from the Thompson family's daily torment. And she'd have the satisfaction of taking something valuable from Gwen instead of the other way around. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was survival. And Stephanie was very, very good at surviving. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers, contracts, and paperwork. True to his word, Robert transferred the 2 historic properties to Stephanie's name. The deeds were signed, notarized, and filed with the county. They were legally hers. Gwen threw a tantrum that lasted 3 full days. She broke 2 vases, screamed at the household staff, and refused to come out of her room. Stephanie had turned the tables against her. Stephanie didn't care. Derek tried to talk to Stephanie 5 separate times. She blocked his number after the 3rd attempt. On the 4th attempt, he showed up at the community college library where she was studying. Stephanie, please, Derek said, sliding into the chair across from her. We need to talk. No, we don't. Stephanie kept her eyes on her textbook. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Stephanie said, finally looking up at him. You chose money over me. You chose to help Gwen humiliate me in exchange for financial help for your family. That wasn't a mistake, Derek. That was a decision. Own it. Gwen's parents said they'd pay off my dad's medical bills, Derek said desperately. He's really sick, Stephanie. Stage 3 cancer. The treatments are bankrupting my family. Gwen offered to help, with the properties that you have just claimed. If she sold one, I could clear our debts. But now you've claimed all of them. She can't even pay up what she promised. When Gwen offered to help, if I just helped her win the bet against you, I thought... You thought it was okay to use me, Stephanie finished. You thought my feelings didn't matter as much as your family's money problems. That's not... Get away from me, Derek. Stephanie started packing up her books. I'm getting married soon, to someone who, even in a coma, has more integrity than you'll ever have. She left him sitting there. 2 days before the wedding, Stephanie went to visit Grandma Thompson at her luxury assisted living facility in the Heights. Grandma Thompson was 94 years old, but her mind was still sharp as a blade. She sat in her room in a comfortable armchair, looking out the window at the gardens. They're making you marry the Monroe boy, Grandma said as soon as Stephanie sat down. No preamble, no small talk. Yes, ma'am. And you agreed to it. Yes, ma'am. Grandma studied her with watery but intelligent eyes. You're tougher than you look. Child, you've got fire in you. I see it. I learned I had to be tough, Stephanie said quietly. The old woman reached into her nightstand and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a jade bracelet, intricately carved, clearly antique, obviously expensive. This belonged to my grandmother, Grandma said. It came over from Louisiana in the 1800s. 4 generations of Thompson women have worn this bracelet. I was planning to give it to Gwen, but... She placed it in Stephanie's hand, closing her weathered fingers around it. You're my actual blood, my real granddaughter. You deserve real family treasures, not that spoiled girl they adopted. Stephanie's eyes filled with tears, the first real tears she'd cried in months. Thank you, Grandma. Don't thank me yet, Grandma said, her voice turning serious. Life is about to get very complicated for you, child. But remember this. The people who underestimate you today will be the ones most shocked by who you become tomorrow. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. Good. Grandma Thompson squeezed her hand. Now go on. And Stephanie, whatever happens, fight. Don't you dare let them break you. I won't, Stephanie promised. Never again. She hugged her grandmother, breathing in her lavender perfume, memorizing the feeling of being loved by someone in this family. What Stephanie didn't see was Gwen, standing in the hallway outside Grandma's room, her ear pressed to the door, listening to every single word. And she definitely didn't see the fury on Gwen's face as she pulled out her phone and texted Derek. The wedding is in 2 days. I need you to stop it. Do whatever it takes. You know what's at stake. Stephanie woke up at 5 a.m. in a hotel room Eleanor Monroe had reserved for her. On the chair by the window hung a simple white dress. Elegant, understated, beautiful. On the dresser sat a small bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. Stephanie stared at herself in the bathroom mirror as she washed her face. In a few hours, she'd be married. To a stranger. To a man who might never wake up. Her phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Derek, again. She declined the call. He called back immediately. Then again. Then again. 8 calls in 15 minutes. Finally furious, Stephanie answered. What, Derek? Stephanie, please don't do this. Derek's voice was strained, almost frantic. You don't have to marry him. We can figure something else out. There is no we, Derek. There hasn't been a we since you chose Gwen. I made a mistake, Derek said desperately. Gwen, she's not who I thought she was. She promised to help my family, but now she's saying she won't pay anything unless I... He stopped abruptly. Unless you what? Stephanie asked coldly. Silence. Derek, unless you what? Unless I convince you not to marry Captain Monroe, Derek finally admitted. Gwen doesn't want you to get the satisfaction of this marriage. She wants you to back out, embarrass yourself in front of the Monroe family, lose your credibility, and have her properties back. And there it was. The truth. Derek didn't want her back because he loved her. He wanted to stop the wedding because Gwen was pulling his strings like a puppet. Let me make something very clear, Stephanie said, her voice like steel. I don't care what Gwen wants. I don't care what you want. In 3 hours, I'm marrying James Monroe. And there's nothing either of you can do to stop me. Stephanie, tell Gwen she lost. Again. I'm never backing out of this marriage if it means holding on to those properties she loves so much. I win. She hung up and blocked his number. At 7:30 a.m., Stephanie put on the white dress. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a bride. She felt like a warrior going into battle. At 8 a.m., Eleanor Monroe knocked on her hotel room door. Eleanor was tall, elegant, in her early 50s, with kind eyes and the posture of someone who'd survived real hardship with grace intact. She wore a simple navy dress and pearl earrings. You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart, Eleanor said softly, her eyes glistening. Thank you for all of this, Stephanie said, gesturing to the dress, the flowers, everything. No, honey, thank you. Eleanor took Stephanie's hands in hers. I know this isn't a conventional situation. I know you have your own reasons for agreeing to this, and that's okay. That's between you and God. But I want you to know, my son can't speak for himself right now. But if he could, I know James would want to meet you properly. He'd want to do this right, with courting and dating and all the things young people deserve. Her voice cracked slightly. This isn't the wedding either of you deserve, but it's all we have right now. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that you're giving us this chance. Stephanie squeezed Eleanor's hands, surprised by the genuine warmth she felt from this woman. Then let's make it count. They went downstairs where a black town car waited, a small white ribbon tied to the antenna. As they drove through Houston's morning traffic toward the hospital, Stephanie watched the city wake up through the tinted windows. This was really happening. She was about to marry a man she'd never met, a man who might never wake up, a man whose time might be running out. But she was doing it as a free woman, not as the Thompson family's victim, not as their disposable sacrifice. That had to mean something. Suddenly, the car swerved violently to the right. "What's happening?" Stephanie grabbed the door handle as the driver cursed. Two black SUVs had appeared out of nowhere, boxing in their town car and forcing it toward the shoulder of Highway 59. The driver tried to maneuver away, but there was nowhere to go. They were trapped. The town car screeched to a stop on the shoulder, cars whizzing past them on the highway. Both SUV doors opened. 4 men in dark suits stepped out. Big men who looked like hired muscle. "Oh, God," Eleanor breathed, already reaching for her phone. Stephanie's door was yanked open from outside. One of the men reached in. "Miss Thompson, you need to come with us, now." "Who are you?" Stephanie demanded, that fire blazing to life. "We work for Derek Williams. He sent us to bring you to him. He says it's urgent, a matter of life and death." "I don't care what Derek wants." Stephanie tried to pull the door closed, but the man was stronger. "Ma'am, we can do this easy or we can do this hard. You have 3 seconds to take your hands off my daughter-in-law." Eleanor's voice cut through like a whip. "Before I call the police and have you arrested for assault." The man hesitated. "Lady, this doesn't concern—" "I am Eleanor Monroe," she said, her voice turning to ice. "My family has been in Houston for 4 generations. My father-in-law is decorated General Thomas Monroe with direct connections to the governor, the mayor, and the chief of police. You just forcibly stopped a vehicle and assaulted my son's bride on her wedding day." Eleanor held up her phone. "I have emergency services on speed dial and a lawyer on retainer. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to step away from this car, get back in your vehicles, and disappear. Or I will make it my personal mission to see you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." The men exchanged uncertain glances. A third black vehicle appeared, this one with Monroe Security emblazoned on the side in gold letters. 4 men stepped out. They were even bigger than Derek's hired muscle, and they looked like former military. "Mrs. Monroe?" the head of security said calmly. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, Daniel. These men just attempted to force my daughter-in-law out of our vehicle." Daniel and his team moved forward with practiced efficiency. Suddenly, Derek's hired muscle didn't look so confident anymore. It was a misunderstanding." "Leave," Daniel said quietly. "Now, before this becomes a police matter and a very public scandal." The men scrambled back into their SUVs and took off. Eleanor helped Stephanie straighten her dress and fix her veil, which had gotten messed up in the struggle. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" Eleanor asked, her hands gentle. Stephanie was shaking, but not from fear. From pure, white-hot rage. "They tried to force me out of the car," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "On my wedding day. Derek and Gwen actually tried to stop this." "Yes, they did," Eleanor said grimly, her own anger carefully controlled. "Which means they're desperate. Which means you're winning, Stephanie. So let's go finish this, shall we?" Stephanie took a deep breath, centering herself, calling on every ounce of strength she'd built up over 24 years of survival. "Yeah," she said, "let's go get married." They arrived at Houston Methodist Hospital 30 minutes late but safe. Eleanor led Stephanie through a private entrance, away from the main lobby, up an elevator to the 3rd floor. The chapel was small and intimate, tucked away in a quiet corner of the hospital. Soft light filtered through stained glass windows. Someone had decorated it simply but beautifully with white flowers and candles. Inside waited James's father, William Monroe, a distinguished man in his 50s with kind eyes and his son's strong jawline. Next to him stood General Thomas Monroe, James's grandfather, 87 years old but still standing straight and tall, his chest covered in military medals. And at the front of the chapel, positioned carefully near the altar, was Captain James Monroe in a wheelchair. Stephanie's breath caught in her throat. She'd expected someone who looked halfway gone. Tubes and machines and the gray pallor of someone fading. Instead, she saw a man who looked like he was sleeping. James was deeply handsome. Strong features, close-cropped hair, broad shoulders even in his weakened state. They dressed him in his army dress uniform, the dark blue fabric crisp and perfect, medals gleaming on his chest. "He looks," Stephanie whispered. "Alive," Eleanor finished softly. "Because he is alive, sweetheart. The doctors say he's not responsive, but we don't believe that. We can't believe that. He's still in there, still fighting." A hospital chaplain stood near the altar, an older black man with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Shall we begin?" he asked gently. Stephanie walked slowly down the aisle, her heels clicking softly on the tile floor. This wasn't how she'd imagined her wedding. No big church. No crowd of friends, no romantic music or flower girls or any of the things she'd secretly dreamed about as a little girl in foster care. But this was her reality now. She reached the front of the chapel and stood next to James's wheelchair. Up close, she could see his chest rising and falling with each breath, could see the faint stubble on his jaw, could see the way his eyelashes rested against his cheeks. He looked peaceful. The chaplain began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the sight of God and these witnesses to join together, Stephanie Marie Thompson and James Daniel Monroe, in holy matrimony." Stephanie barely heard the words. She couldn't stop looking at James. This man had saved children from a burning building, had been critically injured protecting an innocent witness, had lived his life fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. And now he was here, trapped in his own body, unable to speak or move or defend himself. "The couple has chosen to exchange traditional vows," the chaplain said. "Since Captain Monroe is unable to speak them himself, his mother Eleanor will speak on his behalf." Eleanor stepped forward, tears already streaming down her face. "I, James Daniel Monroe," she said, her voice shaking but clear, "take you, Stephanie Marie Thompson, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." Now it was Stephanie's turn. She looked down at James, and something shifted in her chest, something she didn't quite understand yet. Stephanie Marie Thompson," she said clearly, "take you, James Daniel Monroe, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." And she meant it. Every word. The chaplain handed her a simple gold wedding band. Since James couldn't put a ring on her finger, Stephanie slipped the band onto his ring finger herself. Her hands trembled as she did it. "By the power vested in me by the state of Texas, and in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," the chaplain said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." He paused, looking at Stephanie with gentle understanding. "You may kiss your husband." Stephanie leaned down slowly. She pressed a soft kiss to James's forehead, her lips lingering there for just a moment. "I'll fight for you," she whispered against his skin, so quietly only he could possibly hear. "The way you fought for others. I promise." She didn't expect him to respond. But in the hospital monitoring equipment connected to James's wheelchair, something flickered. His heart rate increased. Just slightly. Just for a moment. The chaplain noticed. His eyes widened. But before he could say anything, the moment passed. James's vitals returned to their usual steady rhythm. Eleanor was sobbing. William was crying. Even General Monroe, who'd seen combat in 3 different wars, wiped tears from his weathered face. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chaplain announced, his voice full of emotion, "I present to you Captain and Mrs. James Monroe." Stephanie straightened up, her hand still resting on James's. She was married, to a stranger in a coma. But for the first time in 3 months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd made the right choice. After the ceremony, Eleanor pulled Stephanie aside while the men carefully wheeled James back to his hospital room. "There's something you need to know," Eleanor said quietly, "about James's condition." "What is it?" "The doctors officially declared him unresponsive 3 weeks ago. They recommended we remove life support." Eleanor's voice broke. "But we refused. Because his brain scans, they show minimal activity, but there is activity. It's not much, Stephanie. It's barely anything, but it's there." "What does that mean?" "It means we believe, we have to believe, that James is still in there somewhere, that he can hear us, that he's fighting to come back." Eleanor gripped Stephanie's hands. "The doctors say coma patients sometimes respond to familiar voices, to touch, to love, to having a purpose, a reason to fight." "You think having a wife will give him that reason?" Stephanie said slowly. "I think having you will give him that reason," Eleanor corrected. I don't know why, Stephanie, I can't explain it. But when you said your vows, when you kissed him, his heart rate increased, just for a second. The chaplain saw it too. Stephanie's breath caught. He responded? Maybe. Or maybe it was just a coincidence, but either way, Eleanor's eyes were fierce now. Will you help us? Will you talk to him, spend time with him, be present? Even if it feels strange or pointless? Even if nothing changes? Stephanie thought about James. About the man who'd saved children from fire, who'd been critically injured protecting a stranger. Yes, she said. I'll do whatever it takes. Eleanor hugged her tightly. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to our family. But as they walked toward James's hospital room, Stephanie's phone buzzed. She pulled it out. A text from Gwen. Enjoy your husband in a coma. Hope it was worth $8 million. You'll be alone by Christmas. Stephanie stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, at least my husband is a hero. What's Derek? Oh, right, your puppet. Enjoy pulling his strings. She hit send, then blocked Gwen's number. She was done with them, done with their games, done with their cruelty. Stephanie Monroe now, had a husband to fight for. And she always kept her promises. Stephanie stood in the doorway of room 304, still in her wedding dress, watching as nurses got James settled back into his hospital bed. They'd reconnected all his IVs and monitors, adjusted his pillows. He looked too big in the hospital bed, but vulnerable. You can go in, one of the nurses said kindly. He's your husband now. You can stay as long as you want. Stephanie walked slowly into the room. The nurses left, closing the door quietly behind them, giving them privacy. Stephanie sat in the chair next to James's bed, her wedding bouquet still in her hands. Hey, she said softly. It's me again, your wife. The word still felt strange, but also right somehow. We're married now, Stephanie continued. Officially, legally, for real. She set down her bouquet and took his hand. Your mom thinks you can hear me. She thinks you're in there fighting to come back. I don't know if that's true, James. I don't know if you can hear any of this. But just in case you can, she squeezed his hand. I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't marry you for love. I married you to escape my family, to get money and property and freedom from people who treated me like trash. That's the honest truth. I'm not going to lie to you. The monitors beeped steadily. But here's the other truth, Stephanie said, her voice getting stronger. Even though this marriage started as a transaction, I meant those vows, every word. I'm your wife now, James Monroe. And that means something to me. It means something. She stood up and leaned over the bed rails, looking at his peaceful face. So I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to come here every day and talk to you and help with your therapy and do whatever your mom says might help. Not because I have to. Not because anyone's making me. But because you deserve someone in your corner fighting as hard for you as you fought for other people your whole life. Stephanie pressed another kiss to his forehead. Come back, she whispered. Whenever you're ready, come back, and I'll be here waiting. She settled back into the chair, still holding his hand. And that's where Eleanor found her an hour later, still in her wedding dress, still holding James's hand, talking softly to him about her childhood in foster care, about the books she loved, about her dreams for the future. Eleanor stood in the doorway watching for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. This strange, wounded girl might just be exactly what her son needed. And maybe, just maybe, James was exactly what Stephanie needed too. Stephanie woke up the morning after her wedding with a strange feeling in her chest. She wasn't in the basement of the Thompson mansion anymore. She was in a hotel room Eleanor had kept reserved for her, paid for by the Monroe family for as long as she needed it. On the nightstand sat her wedding bouquet from yesterday, already starting to wilt. Next to it, her phone showed 23 missed calls from blocked numbers, Derek and Gwen. Stephanie deleted them all without listening and looked at her left hand. The simple gold band caught the morning light. She was married to Captain James Monroe, a man in a coma who might never wake up, a stranger who'd become her escape route and, somehow, her responsibility. But as she got dressed and headed to the hospital, Stephanie realized something. She didn't feel trapped. For the first time in 3 months, she felt free. "Good morning, Mrs. Monroe," the nurse at the third-floor desk said warmly. "Mrs. Monroe?" Stephanie smiled despite herself. "Good morning." She walked down the hallway to room 304 and pushed open the door. Eleanor was already there, sitting beside James with 2 cups of coffee. "Good morning, sweetheart," Eleanor said, standing to hug her. "I brought you coffee, cream and 2 sugars, right?" You remembered. Stephanie was touched. Diana Thompson had never once asked how she took her coffee. "You're family now," Eleanor said simply. "This is what family does." Stephanie sat in the chair on the other side of James's bed and looked at him. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly than she had yesterday during the chaos of the wedding. He really was handsome. Strong jawline, full lips, long eyelashes that rested against his cheeks. Even unconscious, there was something commanding about his presence. "He looks peaceful," Stephanie said softly. "He does," Eleanor agreed. "But I know my son. James hates being still. Wherever he is in there, he's fighting to come back." Stephanie reached out and took James's hand, the one with the wedding ring she'd placed there yesterday. "Hey, James," she said quietly. "It's me, Stephanie, your wife, day 1 of married life. I know you can't hear me, but your mom says talking to you helps, so—" She trailed off, feeling awkward. Eleanor smiled warmly. "I'm going to give you two some privacy. Take your time." After Eleanor left, Stephanie settled deeper into the chair. "Okay, so this is weird," she admitted to James's sleeping form. "Talking to someone who can't talk back. But here goes. Your mom told me you're stubborn. Well, guess what? So am I. And I don't lose, Captain Monroe. So you need to wake up. Whenever you're ready, just wake up. Because I made you a promise yesterday, and I keep my promises." On the monitor, James's heart rate increased slightly. Stephanie didn't notice, but the nurse passing by did. A week after the wedding, Stephanie fell into a routine that felt more natural than anything she'd experienced with the Thompson family. Every morning at 8 a.m., she arrived at the hospital. Eleanor would already be there with coffee and stories about James. "He was the most stubborn child," Eleanor said one morning, showing photos on her phone. "See this? He was 7 years old, determined to climb this tree. He fell 4 times, but he kept trying until he made it to the top." Stephanie smiled at the photo of young James, gap-toothed and covered in dirt. "He sounds exhausting." "Oh, he was," Eleanor laughed. "But he was also the sweetest boy. He brought home every stray animal, defended every kid who got bullied at school. He had the biggest heart." "Had?" Stephanie raised an eyebrow. "Has," Eleanor corrected, her eyes getting misty. "Has the biggest heart. He's going to wake up, and when he does, he's going to be so grateful you were here." At 9 a.m., Vanessa, the physical therapist, would arrive, and Stephanie learned to help with James's exercises, moving his limbs to keep his muscles from deteriorating. "Talk to him while you do it," Vanessa instructed. "Some patients respond better to familiar voices." So Stephanie talked. "Okay, Captain, we're bending your right arm now. I bet you hate this, huh? Someone else moving your body for you. You seem like a control freak. Well, too bad. Right now, I'm the boss." After physical therapy, Stephanie would read to James. Eleanor kept bringing romance novels, but after 3 days, Stephanie brought her own choice. "Your mom keeps giving me Jane Austen," Stephanie announced, holding up a thick book. "But today we're reading what I picked, The Count of Monte Cristo. It's about a guy who gets betrayed and comes back for revenge. Felt appropriate." She started reading. Deep in his coma, James heard her voice reading his favorite book and felt something stir in his unconscious mind. Something he hadn't felt in 7 months. A pull back toward consciousness. A reason to fight. 3 weeks after the wedding. Late evening. Stephanie sat in her usual chair beside James's bed, reading aloud from The Count of Monte Cristo. "There is neither happiness nor misery in the world. There is only the comparison of one state with another. Nothing more." She read softly, then paused. "I used to think I understood that. But now—" She looked at James's peaceful face. "Now I think the author was wrong. Because sitting here with you, even like this, feels like happiness compared to every day I spent with the Thompson family." She squeezed his large hand gently. "Is that crazy? Finding peace next to someone who can't even respond?" On the monitor, something changed. James's heart rate ticked up, just slightly, from 68 to 72. Stephanie didn't notice. She kept talking. Your mom thinks you can hear me. Sometimes I think she's right. Sometimes I swear I feel you squeeze my hand back, but the nurses say it's just muscle reflexes. She laughed softly. I'm probably going insane, talking to you like this every day. The heart monitor climbed to 75. But you know what? Even if you never wake up, even if this is my life now, reading to you, helping with therapy, being Mrs. Monroe to a man who doesn't know I exist, it's still better than being Stephanie Thompson, the foster kid nobody wanted. 78 beats per minute. So thank you, James Monroe, for giving me an escape, for giving me a family that actually cares. For... His finger moved. Just a twitch. Barely perceptible. But Stephanie felt it. She froze, staring at their joined hands. James? Nothing. James, if you can hear me, do that again, please. The monitor showed 82 beats per minute now. And then, clear as day, his index finger curled around hers in a deliberate squeeze. Stephanie gasped, jumping to her feet. Oh my God, nurse, nurse. She pressed the call button frantically, never letting go of his hand. James, stay with me. I know you're in there. Keep fighting. Another squeeze, stronger this time. The monitor hit 85. His eyelids flickered. Just for a second, but Stephanie saw it. You're coming back, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. You're actually coming back. Meanwhile, across town, Derek Williams sat in his beat-up Honda outside Herman Memorial Hospital, staring at a mountain of medical bills spread across his passenger seat. 237, 458, 62 total. Due in 72 hours. His father had been discharged that morning. No more treatment, just hospice care and waiting for the inevitable. Derek had called Gwen 17 times demanding the payment she'd promised. She'd blocked his number. He'd gone to the Thompson mansion. Security threw him out like garbage. He'd begged Robert Thompson via email. No response. This was all Stephanie's fault. If she'd just backed out of that wedding like she was supposed to, Gwen would have paid him. His dad would still be getting treatment. But no. Stephanie had to be stubborn. Had to marry that vegetable. Had to take those $8 million properties and win while Derek's father was dying. Well, if Stephanie had the money now, then Stephanie could help him. She owed him that much. Derek pulled out his laptop and started researching Houston Methodist Hospital's security systems. Floor plans, guard rotations, key card access points. His hands shook as he typed. He wasn't a bad person. He was just desperate. If Stephanie wouldn't help him willingly, he'd have to convince her. Derek's father had weeks to live, maybe days. Captain Monroe might not even wake up. His stupid family was just wasting their money getting a wife for him. But if he did, Derek would make sure he went right back to sleep. Permanently. Dr. O'Connor rushed into James's room, followed by two nurses. What happened? She asked, immediately checking his monitors. He squeezed my hand, Stephanie said breathlessly. Twice, and his eyes moved. I saw them. Dr. O'Connor pulled out her pen light, checking James's pupils. James? James Monroe, can you hear me? No response. She lifted his eyelid gently, shining the light. His pupil contracted. Dr. O'Connor's eyes widened. That's new. That's a voluntary response. What does that mean? Stephanie gripped James's hand tighter. It means his brain activity is increasing significantly. He's fighting his way toward consciousness. Dr. O'Connor looked at the monitor. His heart rate is elevated. His brain waves are more active than they've been in months. Whatever you're doing, Mrs. Monroe, it's working. So he might wake up? I can't make promises, but these are very encouraging signs. Dr. O'Connor smiled. Keep talking to him. Keep being present. You might be exactly what he needs to find his way back. After the medical team left, Stephanie sat back down, still holding James's hand. Did you hear that? She whispered. You're getting better. You're fighting. She leaned close to his ear. So keep fighting, okay? Because I need you to wake up, James. I need you to wake up and tell me if this marriage could ever be more than just a piece of paper. I need you to wake up and look at me with those eyes and tell me. She stopped, realizing what she was saying. When had this stopped being about escape and started being about him? Just wake up, she finished quietly. Please. In the hallway outside, Eleanor Monroe stood listening, tears streaming down her face. Her son was coming back, and it was because of the fierce young woman who'd agreed to marry a stranger. But the story is just beginning. Is Stephanie's voice really pulling James back from the edge of death? Can love grow between two people when one is unconscious and the other is running from her past? And what about Derek? He's researching the hospital, watching, planning, getting more desperate by the hour. His father is dying. Stephanie has $8 million. And there's only one thing standing between Derek and the money he needs to save his father, Captain James Monroe. A man who might be waking up. A man Derek is prepared to make sure stays asleep. What happens when Derek makes his move? Will James wake up in time? And what will happen when these two men finally come face to face? One fighting for love, the other fighting for survival. Don't miss episode 2 where everything changes. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment below. Do you think James will wake up? And what should Stephanie do about Derek? Ring that notification bell because episode 2 drops next week and you do not want to miss it. This is about to get intense. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode at the same time next week.